You ever have one of those mornings where you're just sipping your coffee, minding your own business, when the world decides to throw a curveball straight at your face? That's exactly what happened to Jack Thompson, an 81-year-old Vietnam vet, on a quiet Tuesday at Sally's Diner in the sleepy little town of Willow Creek. It was the kind of place where the coffee's always hot, the jukebox plays Johnny Cash, and everybody knows your name until a stranger walks in and flips the script. Jack's no ordinary old-timer. 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star pinned to his chest. The guy's seen things most of us can only imagine. But there he was, same as every morning, perched in his favorite booth by the window at Sally's, newspaper spread out, army cap tilted just so. His hands, all scarred and weathered from those jungle days, flipped pages with a kind of quiet dignity. He wasn't loud about his service, didn't need to be. The way he carried himself straight-backed, eyes sharp, but kind said it all. Folks in Willow Creek knew Jack as the guy who'd fix your porch step or help your kid with a flat tire, no questions asked. His son, Tom, a colonel stationed at Fort Ramsey, was his pride and joy, but Jack never bragged about that either. He just sipped his coffee, read his paper, and let the world spin on. Sally's Diner was the heart of Willow Creek, a chrome and neon joint that had been slinging hash browns for 40 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered floors, walls plastered with faded photos of high school prom queens and hometown boys who'd gone off to war. It was the kind of place where arguments got settled over pie, and respect came easy, especially for folks like Jack. Tuesday mornings were sacred, coffee pots hissing by 5 a.m., regulars claiming their spots, the hum of small-town life kicking into gear. But that morning, something felt off the second a big, leather-clad dude swaggered through the door. He was all boots and bravado, a walking storm cloud looking for a fight. And when his eyes landed on Jack's booth, prime real estate with a view of Main Street, you could feel the air in the diner shift, like the calm before a thunderstorm. "Hey, old-timer," the guy barked, his voice cutting through the clink of coffee mugs. "That's my booth now." Jack didn't flinch, just looked up from his paper, calm as a lake at dawn. He'd stared down Viet Cong snipers. Some loudmouth in a leather jacket wasn't gonna rattle him. "Plenty of empty booths, son," he said, voice low but firm, like he was giving an order he expected to be followed. "No need for trouble." "Trouble?" The biker laughed, a mean, jagged sound that made the waitress, Ellie, freeze behind the counter. "You don't know trouble, Pops. Move." Jack folded his paper, slow and deliberate, sizing the guy up. He'd seen this type before, all bark, looking for a weak spot to pounce. In Vietnam, he'd learned to read a man's intentions in a heartbeat, and this guy wasn't here to negotiate. Jack's eyes flicked to the diner's other patrons' families, old folks, a couple of truckers all watching, holding their breath. He could have stood his ground, could have thrown a punch that'd surprised the hell out of this punk. But at 81, Jack had better moves. He wasn't about to brawl in Sally's Diner. Not yet. The biker, let's call him Vince, mistook Jack's calm for weakness. "Big mistake." "What's the matter, Grandpa?" "Scared?" he sneered, stepping closer, his shadow falling over Jack's coffee. The diner went dead quiet, forks hovering over plates. Vince was fishing for a reaction, but Jack just sipped his coffee, cool as ever. "I've been sitting here 20 years, Jack said, voice steady. "If you need this spot so bad, I suppose I could crack." Vince's backhand came out of nowhere, smacking Jack's army cap clean off his head. The coffee mug flew, shattering on the checkered floor, brown liquid pooling like blood. Gasps rippled through the diner. Ellie flinched, her tray rattling. The truckers froze, hands halfway to their mouths. Vince stood there, grinning like he'd just won a prize, towering over Jack, who sat stock still, coffee dripping down his sleeve. For a second, you could have heard a pin drop. Then Jack reached down, slow as you please, picked up his cap, and dusted it off. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, oh, those eyes burned with something fierce, something that had survived jungles and ambushes. He wasn't scared. He was thinking. "Excuse me, Ellie," Jack said, voice calm as ever, like he was ordering a refill. "Mind if I use the phone?" Ellie, barely 20, nodded, pointing to the old payphone by the restrooms. Jack stood, ignoring Vince's taunts. "Go cry to your nurse, old man," and walked over, every step measured, like he was marching to a drum only he could hear. The diner watched, torn between fear and awe. Vince, oblivious, kept playing to the crowd, strutting like a peacock, telling anyone who'd listen how he'd taught the old fool a lesson. But Jack was making a call that had changed the game. The call was short, clipped, like something out of a war room. "Tom, it's Dad. I'm at Sally's on Main. Got a situation, civilian assault. Could use backup." At Fort Ramsey, 30 miles away, Colonel Tom Thompson was knee-deep in logistics reports when his phone rang. His dad's voice, steady but urgent, hit him like a gut punch. Jack Thompson didn't call for help unless things were serious. Tom didn't hesitate. "On my way, Dad," he said, already motioning to his aide. Within minutes, Fort Ramsey was buzzing. For Humvees, 8 soldiers, all hand-picked Tom's best. This wasn't just a family matter. It was an attack on one of their own. The military doesn't mess around when it comes to veterans, and Tom was about to make that crystal clear. Back at Sally's, Vince was still holding court, sliding into Jack's booth like he owned it, arms spread wide, crowing about respect and how old fossils needed to learn their place. The other patrons shifted uncomfortably, some slipping out the door, others whispering for Ellie to call the cops. Ellie, bless her, tried to defuse things. "Sir, maybe take another booth? Mr. Thompson's been coming here forever." Vince just laughed, leaning across the table toward Jack, who'd returned to his seat, sipping a fresh coffee Ellie had brought without a word. "Forever's over, sweetheart," Vince said. "This is my spot now." Jack didn't bite. He just sat there, checking his watch, calm as a sniper waiting for the shot. Outside, the faint rumble of engines started to creep through the diner's walls. Nobody noticed at first, nobody but Jack. His eyes flicked to the window, just a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. Vince kept running his mouth, oblivious, but the air was changing, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ellie caught Jack's eye and saw something that made her step back, not fear, but knowing. She'd grown up in a military town. She knew that look. Backup was coming. Then it hit. The roar of diesel engines drowned out Vince's bluster as 4 Humvees rolled up to Sally's in perfect formation, kicking up dust on Main Street. Soldiers poured out, moving like they'd drilled this 1,000 times. No combat gear, but their boots hit the ground with purpose. Colonel Tom Thompson stepped out of the lead vehicle, his uniform crisp, his face a mix of fury and focus. This was personal, but he was all business. Inside, Vince froze mid-sentence, his jaw dropping as he caught sight of the military convoy through the window. "What the hell is this?" he stammered, his bravado melting like ice in a microwave. The diner's door swung open, and Tom strode in, eyes locking on his dad. He took in the red mark on Jack's cheek, the coffee stains on his jacket, and you could see the anger flare behind his calm. "Dad," he said, voice tight. "You okay?" Jack nodded, sipping his coffee like it was just another Tuesday. "I'm fine, son. But this fella here thinks he can smack around old veterans without consequences." Tom turned to Vince, who was shrinking in the booth, suddenly looking like a kid caught stealing. "Sir," Tom said, his voice cold as steel, "you assaulted a decorated combat veteran, 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 Purple Hearts. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a federal crime." Vince's face went ghost white. "Federal crime?" he sputtered. "It was just a slap. He's fine." Tom stepped closer, his shadow swallowing Vince's bravado. "He's my father," he said, voice low, deadly. "And you're about to learn what happens when you mess with a soldier's family." The diner was electric now, every eye on the showdown. Vince, cornered, made one last play. "You can't scare me with your little army show," he growled, standing up, fists clenched. "This is America, not some war zone." Big mistake. The soldiers outside shifted, hands on holsters, ready to move. But Jack stood up, slow and steady, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Son," he said to Vince, calm but commanding, "you've made enough bad calls today. Don't make another." That was it. Vince's defiance crumbled like a cheap card table. He sank back into the booth, hands shaking, realizing he'd picked the wrong fight. Tom nodded to his men, who held their positions, all discipline and no nonsense. He turned to the diner's manager, Pete, who'd been hovering by the counter, torn between calling the cops and keeping things calm. "Pete, mind calling the sheriff? We've got a citizen's arrest here." Pete scrambled for the phone, relief washing over his face. As they waited for the cops, Vince tried one last desperate plea. "Come on, man, It was just a little tap. You're blowing this out of proportion. Tom didn't blink. You assaulted an elderly veteran in front of witnesses and a security camera, he said, pointing to the blinking red light above the counter. The footage shows my dad trying to talk you down, offering to move, and you hitting him anyway. Good luck explaining that in court. Sheriff Dan Carter rolled in minutes later, a Desert Storm vet who knew Jack from way back. He took one look at the scene, Jack calm, Vince sweating, soldiers standing guard, and nodded to Tom. Colonel Thompson, he said, then turned to Jack. Staff Sergeant Thompson, heard you had some trouble. The respect in his voice was real, a nod to shared service. He turned to Vince, eyes hard. Son, you assaulted an 81-year-old veteran. That's a crime, plain and simple. And I've seen the tape. You're not talking your way out of this. Vince tried anyway, whining about how he didn't know Jack was military, like that made it okay. Jack finally spoke up, his voice quiet but heavy, like it carried the weight of every battle he'd fought. Doesn't matter if I was military or not, son. You knew hitting an old man was wrong. You did it anyway. The diner went silent, his words hanging in the air like gospel. Even Vince shut up, his excuses drying up under the truth. The cuffs went on, and Vince was let out, his swagger gone, replaced by the slump of a man who'd miscalculated bad. But the real moment came after. A kid, maybe 10, who'd been sitting with his grandma in the corner, walked up to Jack, eyes wide. Sir, he said, voice shaky but brave. Are you a soldier? Jack's face softened, a real smile breaking through. Was, son. A long time ago. The kid threw a wobbly salute, and Jack returned it, crisp and perfect. The diner burst into applause, a wave of pride washing over the room. Where Vince had brought shame, this kid brought honor. In the days after, Sally's Diner became more than a greasy spoon. Folks started calling Jack's booth the Veterans Table, and Pete put up a plaque to honor every soldier who'd ever walked through those doors. Vince. He got community service at the local VA hospital, where he'd spend months hearing stories from the old fossils he'd disrespected. But the ripple effect was bigger. Willow Creek started flying veteran-friendly signs in shop windows. The town council passed a resolution calling their home a haven of honor. Jack, humble as ever, found himself speaking at schools, telling kids about service, respect, and doing what's right. He and Tom started a mentorship program, pairing old vets with young soldiers, passing down lessons hard-won in jungles and deserts. That day at Sally's wasn't just about one bully getting his comeuppance. It was about a community remembering what matters, the bonds that hold us together, the respect we owe those who've served, and the courage it takes to stand up when it counts. But here's the thing, not everyone saw it the same way. Some folks whispered that Tom overdid it, rolling in with Humvees like it was a war zone. Others said Vince deserved worse. Where do you stand? Was this justice, or did it go too far? Drop a comment. Share your take. I want to hear what you think about respect, consequences, and what it means to stand up for your own. And if this story hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep the conversation going.